Good afternoon, good afternoon, good afternoon. Welcome to another edition of Behind the Book podcast. I'm your host, Audrey Bell Kearney. I'm so excited to have my guest here today. She is going to talk about, how to get financially fit. And, when she first told me this story, it was like, I, so what caught my attention was when she said, I would go to the mailbox at 3 o'clock in the morning to get the mail out. And I was like, why? And she told me the story why, and I was like, "Wow!" I had never heard of anything like that. And so I would like to welcome Miss Teresa Carthron to the show. She's the author of this amazing book, y'all. Listen, if you don't have it, if you don't have the book, you got to get the book. You got to get the book. It's in the shopping cart right there. Get the book. It's right there for you. She's the author of Financially Fit, and so she's a nurse. And so for me, I got to tell y'all a quick story. So Teresa's a nurse, and when I was younger, I was in college, and I left college. I started to work at a hospital. I worked at United Hospital in Newark for 8.5 years, and I went to school to be a nurse. And so she don't know this. We share so much in common. It's the weirdest thing. But I went to school. I was in the hospital working in the X-ray department. But I decided I wanted to be a nurse because I saw how much money nurses were making. And I remember telling my mom, I'm going back to school to be a nurse. Now, at that time, I was a part of a union called 1199 because hospital in Jersey, they were unionized. So I was a part of 1199 union, which meant we get to go to school for free. And so I was like, well, I'm going back to school to get my degree in nursing. So I went back to school. I was a straight A student in A and P, Teresa. Like people like, how the freak you get A's in A and P? I
I
had A's.
know.
A and P one and two, I had A's. It was the craziest thing. But I could not stand touching anything. And I remember going through 2 years, got to my second year for clinicals, and I had to change a colostomy bag. And right at that point, my nursing career ended right then and there. But I remember my mom saying, why are you trying to go to school to be a nurse? You're not cut out for that. And I was like, no, I can make all this money because all I saw was money. All I saw was dollar signs. So I just wanted to tell y'all the backstory to that part. My reason for being a nurse had nothing to do with my compassion for people. It was all about money. I know, sad but true, sad but true. But it takes a certain kind of person to be a nurse. Let me say that I wasn't that person because I had a weak stomach for a lot of things. I remember being in college, and I remember in my dorm, I went to Montclair State, and I remember working in the cafeteria in my dorm. So I was in Blanton Hall, which was the newest college campus, and that's the dorm I lived in. And I used to work downstairs. So when I wasn't in class, I was working. This guy came in. He had chicken pox. I should have known right then and there that I wasn't cut out to be a nurse. He had chicken pox. He was a white guy. He had all these marks all over his face. He comes in the line. I look up and see his face and drop all the plates on the floor. All the food just go flying. I broke out into hives and had to go to my dorm room and stay in there for 3 days with calamine lotion on me. That's when I should have known I wasn't cut out to be a nurse. But my mother knew, and she said to me, "Don't do it." So, without further ado, I just had to tell y'all that story. So when she starts to talk about her story, you'll get a better understanding of why I told the story. So Teresa, thank you so much for being my guest today. You are an amazing person. You guys got to read the book. Like I love stories, and her book is written so well and in such a story format. I was like, this is really cool. I'm a story reader. Like I like stories, and she tells a great story about how she overcame being in debt and to where she is right now. And I know she's doing some great stuff behind the scenes, y'all, but I'm gonna let her tell you about it. So welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you so much. And you know what? I have one of those stories too. I always actually believed as a child that I was going to be in the medical field. So I just always knew that that was going to be my journey. I didn't know in what capacity, whether I was going to be a doctor or, what. I thought I was going to be a doctor at one point, but I ended up landing with nursing, and I'm really happy that I did. But I can tell you that when I was doing my clinicals, after my first bath that I gave, I was sitting there so nauseated, and we were having lunch, and I was just nauseated. And all of the other students said, "You're not gonna make it," and I said, "Oh yes, I am." And the good thing about it is that there are so many things that you can do with nursing, and so maybe if you had stuck it out, you would see there are so many. There are things you can do in nursing you don't even have to touch a person. So, but you do have to go through that other stuff to get to kind of get to that. But yes, definitely. And you know what? I didn't even think about the money when I went into nursing. I didn't, you know, I don't know that I thought about it so much. I did feel that it was something that would allow me to be able to take care of myself. But you know, I wasn't thinking about that, but I made it on through, and I'm really glad.
You know, I think what happened with me is because I went to college and I was really good in math. And somebody should have told me I could have been an engineer. But instead, because I was really good in
Hmm.
math and science, they told me to go to be an accountant. And I'm not that person who liked doing the same stuff over and over. But I didn't know that at the time because I didn't have a
Hmm.
coach at the time. Like we're all coaches now, and coaches come a
Right.
dime a dozen. So I didn't have a coach. I had a guidance counselor who said, Audrey, you're really good in math and science. Go to be an accountant. I'm like, okay. Then I get to college, Teresa, and like, this is not what I'm supposed to be doing. So I didn't do anything for the second semester of college but play spades and eat sunflower seeds and drink orange juice. That's all I did. And that worked out horribly for me. And then I went back to school to become a nurse. And that was because I was already working in the hospital. And I just saw what I thought was a great lifestyle because they worked 3 days and they were off 4 days and they made a lot of money. So that's all I saw. Like I like to party and I like to shop. Like this is perfect because I was partying 4 days a week, Thursday through Sunday. So to me, this was like a win-win, right? So me and my friends were hanging out Sunday through Thursday, and then we worked 3 days. We worked like come to work tired. So it made sense to me that that was a great career option for me. However, I went in it for the wrong reason, and it did not work out for me. But for you, it worked out. Now, for those of you who don't know, and I went to college. Me and one of my best friends. Now she's like you. She always wanted to be a nurse. What was crazy is we went to school together to be a nurse. We went to college together the first time at Montclair State, and then we went back to school. We worked at the same hospital. She worked in critical care ICU. I worked in X-ray. We went back to school to be nurses together. I stopped going, and so did she, which was I never could figure it out because she wanted to be a nurse. I was like, I just want the
Hmm.
money. So for people who understand what the nursing professional offer, tell us what an average, because we're going to get to why I'm asking all these money questions, y'all, because this is a show about becoming financially fit. So you got to understand where she is, where she came from, and how she got to where she was to where she is right now. So the average, what's like an average starting salary for a nurse? I know back then, I can't remember what it was. It was way more than I was making, and I was considered making good money back then. So what's a good starting salary for a nurse today?
And you know what? That is really interesting because starting salary for a nurse is near six figures. I
Wow.
mean, it's up there. I mean, easily 80, 85,000. That would be like you can get that anywhere. Like anywhere. Like there's no competition really for that. And but you can approach six figures just coming out of school. When I came out of nursing school, there was a demand, for nurses. There was a shortage. And guess what? Today there is still a shortage. And part of that is, the pandemic, a lot of people decided to leave, the nursing field, or at least in a hands-on capacity during the pandemic. But even without the pandemic, there was already a shortage. And then now here we are. I've been a nurse now 25 years, which I can't hardly believe. But, people are retiring. Those people that were already there when I came out of school, even if they stayed, they're retiring. So it's like there's a constant situation where people are, changing in the profession or either retiring, and we just don't have enough, which became very clear during the pandemic that we just didn't have enough nurses. People from different states were flying to other places. Maybe the pandemic wasn't hitting their state so hard, so they were flying to other places to try to help them. And still, that there were just not enough.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think
So
I yeah. Go ahead.
go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I
Oh,
was
I
just
was
gonna
just gonna say, so you can make definitely what you said, you can make great money, in nursing, and you don't have to kill yourself doing it. I mean, most people working 9 to 5, working 5 days a week. In nursing, if you work 5 days a week, you could actually be working two jobs and getting two of those 80 plus $1,000 and still have your weekends off.
I might need to go back to school. Wait a minute. Hold on. Hold up. Wait a minute. Nah, listen, I'm not even that's a joke, y'all. And it's so funny because I wish I had known then, but I didn't know. I knew that, I went to the same primary care physician my entire life while I was in Jersey. I went to
Mm.
the same OBGYN doctor my entire life, when I started going. So it all looked like, okay, well, there's a nurse in the doctor office, she does this. There's a nurse in the hospital, she does that. I didn't know of any other um, ancillary positions in the nursing field. Only, even in the hospital and the doctor office today, fast forward today, there are many. I could have been a school nurse. I had that didn't even cross my mind, probably because there was too many kids there. Hence I got one kid, y'all. I got one. My brother started saying, "You should be a teacher." Nope, nope, nope. That's why I got one. I only got one. So
Mm.
it's those type of things right there that made me say, I didn't see any other options. So I just like, that's not for me. I wish somebody had told me, one, I could have been an engineer, because I probably would have been great at that, because I am a problem
Mhm.
solver, or I could have been a freaking entrepreneur. However, I'm an entrepreneur today, 25 years later. So I'm okay with that path that God put me on. He took me through all that stuff to get me to entrepreneurship. Now,
Yes, yes.
making that type of money, and you've been in the industry a long time, I'm not trying to read your pockets, but if you're starting out making that kind of money and you've been in the industry a very long time in that field, so I'm assuming you're doing pretty good. And I asked her this question. I was like, but you're a nurse, because in my mind, this is me still thinking 25 years later, but you're a nurse, how did that happen? How did you get into debt? Like, what happened? How did that happen? So tell us about your story, and how you were a nurse, and you still found yourself, just dreading going to the freaking mailbox.
Yes, and you know what? I think the reason that I actually came out to tell my story was to just let people know that it's not just people who don't make money or who are working minimum wage or laid off or whatever the situation may be.
Mhm.
It's not just those people who actually go into debt or have debt. It's really about money management. I mean, you could be a millionaire, but if you're not managing it well, think about those stories that you hear about people who win the lottery and then 3, 4, 5 years later, they have none of that money and really nothing to show for it. So if you have poor, I would say poor money habits, if you have that, then you can just basically just go through that money. And for me, my first experience with credit cards really came when I went to college. So, I mean, no disrespect to my family at growing up, but we didn't sit around the table talking about money and how to manage it. And, we didn't, or talk about bills. I didn't hear my parents talking about those types of things, and they didn't talk to us about those types of things. I mean, of course, I was excellent with math. I was very strong in math as well. But I figured out in high school that accounting was not for me, because trying to find that penny was too much for me. Yeah, um, but here I am. I'm in college, and I say to people, look, that was when I saw my first credit card application, and I think my credit card application actually had some kind of perfume on it. Seemed like they used to have like some kind of, because they were marketing, some fragrance or
Yeah.
something, and you could rub it and you would smell. So I mean, and then they're telling you only have to pay $25 a month, right? Well, hey, I'm in college and I have this allowance that my mom is sending me, and she's definitely sending me $25. So it seems like, hey, this is a win-win, right? But they don't tell you you're going to pay that $25 for the rest of your entire life.
Right.
And so, but I started getting credit cards. And even though I was working, because when I was in school, I worked at McDonald's. I was like the best fry girl ever and drive through. But I graduated from school. I actually became a nurse and I was working, but I just didn't have that good habit of actually paying these credit cards or focusing on paying them off or anything like that. I just kept paying that little $25 or whatever the minimum payment was. And then, you end up with multiple credit cards. With I just started not even really paying them that much attention. I just really was not. So I was just making crazy money. Oh, and then on top of that, maybe after being a nurse 2 years, I started traveling. And as a travel nurse, like the money they told me I was going to make, I didn't even believe them. I just went because it sounded exciting. So I just did not even believe that I was going to even make that money. And people were laughing. I can remember being on the van when they picked me up from the airport, and people on the van who had worked for the company for a while, they actually were laughing at me because I was like, okay, so you've been working for a while. Like, do you really get it? And they were like, yes, you really get it. And I was like, yeah, whatever. But when I got my first check, it was like insane. So,
Wow.
and I did that for quite some time. So even through all of that, I was just mounting up all of this debt. And it got to the point to where I had so many bills coming to my mailbox that I literally just dreaded going to the mailbox because I just didn't want to see those bills. And it seemed like for some reason in my head that I couldn't pay them. And I don't know why I even thought that because I really was making the money, but I just wasn't even looking at it. Just the fact that these bills were coming and that people were wanting something from me, it just was so frustrating and so daunting. So I would take those bills. I would go to the mailbox and I would sort through anything that was like a bill, but it wasn't like wasn't a necessity, like the light bill, phone bill, car note, that kind of thing. I would put it into like a plastic bag, like a Walmart bag, Kroger, or whomever. Really, mostly it was Walmart. And before you knew it, I literally had stacks of bags. And when I would clean up, it was like I would push them. They had their corner that they would go to, and it would be repeat bills because I wasn't even paying them. I wasn't paying them. And why or what my rationale, I really don't know. But it got to the point to where really I did. I would go to the mailbox once a week. And let me tell you, Audrey, I would go to that mailbox um, on the day that we went to church. So we went to church at that time on Saturdays. So I would get up at 3 in the morning. So it is pitch black dark, and I would make that walk to the mailbox. And my mailbox would be full. I would have to literally take a Walmart bag with me to even put all of the mail that had accumulated for the entire week. Now, the reason that I would go at 3 in the morning was because it would just bring my spirit so low that I would literally have to just throw myself in the bed once I got back from
Wow.
that mail. And it seemed like I would walk a mile. It seemed like that mailbox was so far. But I would go out there to the mailbox, I would get the mail, and then I would back into the house, and then I would sort through and all of those bills. Here I have another Walmart bag, and I would just throw it over there into the pile, and I would literally go back to bed and then get up and go to church so they could just pray me on up and make me bring me back to my joy and so that I could go on with my life until that next weekend.
So it's so crazy because I think about it now. Like you, when I was in college, they promised us all a credit card. I think the first credit card I got was a Spiegel credit card, and I remember being able to, because Spiegel back then in the day, I don't know if you remember Spiegel, but Spiegel was kind of like the Nordstrom of the time. So you had a
Yes.
Spiegel card, like you were
Oh,
doing something. So I got a
yes.
Spiegel card, and I remember buying my first dress from Spiegel. I was a size 14 girl, and I was excited because I had never been a 14 in my life. So here I was in college, a size 14 with a Spiegel card. You couldn't tell me anything. But I went down the same crazy path like you. And I remember when I moved to Georgia, I had bags and bags of bills inside of a tote, like the biggest tote that you could buy. Mine was full of bills. And I literally went through every bill. And just like you, had a ton of duplicates. And I took all my duplicates out and trashed them. And I said, okay, you know what? I'm going to pay these bills off. And I did. I paid them all off. And that was daunting. But it was so freeing once I did that. It was, and to the point now, it's like I hate to see a bill come. Like I'm looking at bills like, where does this come from? And because I hate it. It bothers me so bad because I know
Hmm.
where I was. And I remember my daughter, I was 24 years old, and I had just had my daughter the first time I filed bankruptcy. I was 24 because I had so many credit cards, so many credit cards. And it took me till I was 34 for that to clear my credit up. And I said to myself, that'll never happen again. And because I remember trying to go and get stuff, and I could get a car, anybody can get a car, but you couldn't get the best interest rates. You couldn't get
Mhm.
the best. And even
Mhm.
when I tried to get my house in Jersey, like we got caught up in that 2006, 2008 housing bomb. Yeah, we were caught dead smack in the middle. So I remember paying my mortgage $39.93 a month. That was a mortgage on a $356,000 house. So we got towed up because of that. And I was like, yeah, that's never gonna happen again. So how did you manage to, once you said, you know what, I'm done. What made you get to the point where you were just done? Because for me, it was like all of that. It was like I was stressed completely out, and I was like, I'm never doing that again. And to this day, I'm the person that I go to bed at night. I check my bank account. It's crazy. I check all my accounts. Right. The last thing I do
Every day.
every day. So when I go to
Every
bed
day.
at night, the last two things I do before I put on my meditation is check my Fitbit and log all my food and exercise and all the stuff I didn't do for the day. And then I go and look at the bank accounts. And I say, okay, let me go down the line, make sure everything good. And this is just a habit that I've come to do. And this is every night. And that's because I remember looking at the bank and the bank charging you $35 because you missed something or something came through. And you're like, oh my God, I forgot about that. No, and I hate doing that. So I was like, I'm never doing it again. So I will go through and check everything because I know my business expenses, my regular household expenses, those are pretty cool. But my business has so many pieces attached to it. So I have to make sure that I didn't buy something, that I forgot about and things like that. So how did you get to the point where you say, this is enough? I'm tired of going to the mailbox at 3 o'clock on a Saturday morning, 3 o'clock a.m. on a Saturday morning. What made you get to that point?
You know what? Honestly, Audrey, I was going on just living my best life, as they say. I was happy. I was married. I was, working. So, I mean, I had a husband that was working. So, why in the world do I have this debt? And but I was working. When I say I was working, I was working. I was working those 12-hour shifts, and I was working six days a week. So I was banking. I felt good. I was, and but one week, I said, you know what? I'm going to take some time off. Right. So I was typically never really at home. I was working 7 in the morning till 7 at night. And so by the time I would get home, it would be 8, 9 o'clock sometimes. And so I wasn't at home, but I had decided to take some days off. And oh, I'm telling you, I was dreaming, I was planning how I was going to sleep in, which I'm not a late sleeper anyway. But I can tell you that I was lying in the bed and the phone started to ring like right at 8 o'clock. And I was like, who in the world would be calling at 8 o'clock in the morning, right?
Right.
So, of course, I didn't answer it and I just went on my way. Well, then maybe like 8:30 or 9, the phone rings again. And then it just seemed like every 30 minutes that the phone was ringing. So I finally like sat up and I was like, who in the world? And so I looked at it and I grabbed the phone, with an attitude and said, hello. And there was this guy on the other end of the line, and he was like telling how he was looking for Teresa Foster. At that time, even though I was married, I still used my maiden name. And so I said, this is she. And so he starts telling me he was from this credit card company and how, this call is being recorded and I'm calling you, to collect a debt. Oh, yeah. So and then I was just complete silence. And so I'm listening to him. What I will say is that I had enough knowledge or fortitude about myself to not agree to like anything on the phone. So as he's talking to me and he's throwing out these numbers, I'm saying to him, well, you know what? I need to check that out, or you need to send that to me in writing. He's like, ma'am, we have been sending it to you in writing. And I
Right.
was like, well, they probably had.
Right in one of them bags.
It's in one of those bags. And so he said that. And then, but he was like really I would say kind of aggressive with me. Like he's trying to get me to agree like right then and then the amount that he wanted in my head, it was like, what is he talking about? I'm not giving anybody like that amount like all at one time. Anyway, whatever, even if it is correct. And
Hmm.
then he started saying, well, can't you borrow from a friend? And I'm like, what? And so anyway, we had to end that call. Well, once we ended that call, I mean, literally, I got up, I took a shower, and I went and I started pulling those bags out. Well, yes, what I realized was I had so many duplicates. So I mean, when I say it took me a long time to just whittle through the pile to see like what really was, like an ongoing bill or if it was a duplicate, and like trashing those things and get down to like, my 4 or 5 or 10 or however many credit cards it was at that time that I really owed. So then I actually started reading the bills. Now, I don't know if you've ever read a bill before. I'm not talking about, see, up until that point, my thought process or my understanding of it all was you get this credit card, you have this credit limit, and then you have your monthly amount that you have to pay each month. So basically, when I would open up a bill, I was just reading across like the top. This is how my full balance, that I owed if I paid it in full, but then here is like the minimum amount due, right?
Hmm.
So as I was looking at it, but then when I started to read the bill from left to right, from the top to the bottom,
What did you
I was
discover?
like, oh my God. And especially, and I'm sorry, my student loan, when I read my student loan bill, I became furious. I said, they're stealing from me. I really
Mm.
felt they were stealing money. The interest that they were putting on, and this little addition, additional amount for this, the origination amount, the this, the that, the so and so. I said, they're stealing money. They are literally stealing money from me. And that just made me, I was like, oh no, no more, like as they say, smelling the coffee and skipping through the tulips. I needed to get it together. And
At that
so when
point,
I said,
at that point, about how much debt would you say you had?
I had a good $70,000 in debt.
Wow.
And at that time, and when I talk about this on the stage, I say to people, do you know that like in the history of the NFL, that the quarterbacks combined have not even thrown 70,000 miles?
Wow. Wow.
And here I am, I owe $70,000 in debt.
Wow.
So, I mean, and I just said, okay, I got to get out of this. So that's when I decided to just take the lead, take charge of everything. I did not talk to the creditors. And look, to add insult to injury, when I discovered all of this, guess what? My grandmother came to live with us.
Mm.
So she's at my house every day while I was gone. And when
Answer.
I would come home, she was saying, well, some man called you or some woman called you. And she wasn't even getting all the information because I would say, well, what's the phone number? Oh, so that was just a mess. So what I did was, because then I'm like embarrassed because I'm thinking, surely she knows, what's going on. But she never did. All she knew was the phone just rang all the time. So what I did, I turned the ringer off of the phone. And
Yeah.
I told my grandmother she did not have to answer any calls. Don't worry about it. Let the answer machine get it. But I told her she could make all of the outgoing calls to whomever, because we are originally from Arkansas. So she was here from Arkansas and all her friends were back there. So I told her she could call and talk to them all that she wanted, but to just not bother answering the phone. And so I just started trying to figure it out. And it was trial and error, but I came up with a plan that was, I said that plan has been tried and tested, and I've done it. I've shared it with others, and they have done it as well.
It's so funny because I sit here and I listen to you, and I think about the people that are gonna hear this show, see this show, buy the book, and they're probably thinking the same thing too. Like, I'm making all this money and I'm living paycheck to paycheck, and I don't know why. So you said you didn't know why you didn't want to pay the bills. So you were making the money. So what in your mind turned on and said, you know what, I'm making all this money, pay the bill? Because for me, I know some people who hate paying bills. Like, they just don't like to pay bills. And I get it. Nobody likes to pay bills. But when you think about pay the bill so you don't have to have the stress, and I know because I've been there. I remember when I first started on my entrepreneur journey, I've always driven Jeep Cherokees, Jeep something, Jeep Patriot, Jeep Sport. For some reason, I like Jeeps. And I remember my Jeep was parked in front of my house, and I wanted to I wanted to run this business. So I quit my job. I was working at Verizon making good money, but God gave me this vision. I'm gonna do this business, and I quit my job. And then I was up half the night every time I would hear a loud noise because I thought they was repossessing my truck, right? So I got to the point where I was like, okay, this sucks. I can't keep doing this. This is stressing me out. Why do you think people who make the money and can afford to pay the bills just don't pay the bills?
Well, there's a book in my future that I've mentioned to you before that's
Yes.
called Poor Man's Habits. And I
Mm.
just think that you haven't developed that habit yet. Like I said, when I was growing up, now we knew how to count money and we definitely knew how to make change from, like, when we had fundraisers and stuff, selling Girl Scout cookies, Boy Scouts candles at school. What we were good with money in that way, but really understanding like how money works, the power of money, bills, and really, if you think about it, probably, I don't even know if my mom had credit cards. That's not even something that we, even to this day, have too much talked about. But growing up, during that time, I don't think that our parents borrowed as much money or used credit cards, or definitely not in the way that we use them now. So the only thing that I knew about credit cards really was just whatever I saw in college, or maybe something on television or something like that. So I just didn't have that as a strength. And I started out, I think that, when I was in college, I started out, paying that $25, but then, oh, here's somebody else that says that I can have another credit card. And so I get that one, and oh, it's $50 more. Oh, I can pay that. But then, once you get 7, 8, 9, 10, and everybody wants that, and then you're operating off of your allowance, it becomes difficult. And then you kind of form that habit of, oh, I'll pay it later. And then eventually it just turns into not at all. And I think that once I actually graduated from school, I was already at that not at all point. And
Right.
so I think
Right.
that that was something that just continued. I didn't even, and so the bills were coming, and in my mind, yes, I'm thinking about eventually, I'm gonna pay them. But now I've gotten married, I have a house, I have responsibilities. So it didn't even fall into my list of priorities. And that's the only thing that I can think of. I think that when you haven't developed that as a habit, you haven't developed that as a strength. I mean, living paycheck to paycheck, now what I understand, or what I feel now that my mind has shifted a little bit about it, it's really a choice. It's it's,
I
it's a
agree.
choice.
I
Hmm.
agree. It's so funny because my mom, now my mom knew about loans and credit because she did it all. It was so so funny because as you were talking, my mother had, when she passed away, she had about 10 credit cards. But when I tell you she was never late ever, she was never late on nothing. She had insurance for everything. It's the weirdest thing because she is the reason I am the way I am, and my brother is the way he is. She's the reason because my mother raised my brother and I by herself. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, she took out loans. I remember her filing bankruptcy twice, building her credit all the way back up to almost 800. She did it like twice. And then the last time she did it, it stayed there. And so they would send her credit card offers after offer after offer. And I would be fussing like, why you keep getting all these? Because this is me. Because you done taught me don't do that. And I've been through that whole thing of filing bankruptcy. And I was like, why you keep getting all these credit cards? She didn't care. and she paid every one of them, Teresa, on time. Nobody called her, and it was so funny because we pranked her one time because we know she never paid anything late, so we pranked her.
Mm-hmm.
And we called her and told her we were calling because her card note hadn't been paid because she paid everything on time. And we knew she was gonna flip out because she pays everything on time. So we pranked her and we told her the card note hadn't been paid. And oh my God, why did we do that? She flipped out. Had it been a real bill collector, they probably would have hung up on her because that was just not who she was. She was that person that was gonna pay everything on time. I don't care how many bills it was. That's just who she was. So and I used to always be fussing like, "Don't get another credit card. Why you keep getting all these credit cards?" And she's like, "Don't tell me what to do. You don't tell me what to do. You're not the boss of me." Because it was like now I'm trying to boss her around, but I wasn't the boss of her. So she managed very well on not making hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's the other thing. Like she wasn't making hundreds of thousands of dollars. She was making $100,000, but she managed to make everything pay everything on time. When you decided, I've had enough, what were some of the steps that you took to start to pay off the debt that you had, that $70,000 worth of debt?
Well, and you know what was really interesting was at that point I really wasn't even continuing to charge things. When my husband and I got married, I became the queen of layaway. I mean, and so even to this day, I love layaway. Even though places will tell you that they don't have layaway,
Hmm.
they'll say it's like pay over time or 90 days, same as cash, layaway, honey. But then they'll pull you to the side and say, well, as long as you're paying on it, you can leave it here. That's layaway. And
Right.
so my husband and I just kind of made a pact that, when as we were buying furniture and things for the house, that it could not come across the threshold unless it was paid for. So I think that at that point I had developed an appreciation for delayed gratification. So not having to have something like immediately. If and today pretty much if we use a credit card, it's like we already have the money for it, but we're going to use the credit card like as your documentation and that type of thing. But what some of the steps were was, first of all, I just started to think about I started super small. So I started with what was actually getting next to me or causing me like any type of anxiety and stress. And that was all these bills that were coming to the mailbox in the first place. And so
Hmm.
me actually sitting there and taking the time to go through each bag and open up each, and I just kept doing it until I got to like the most recent one. So say for instance, if I hadn't paid something and here it is, it's September 2022, that's the bill I'm going to keep. And all those others, I put those in the shredder and threw that out. So that got rid of all of that clutter. Then what I did was I really just didn't like the bills, period. So I took out like a composition book. You can get those at Walmart for 99 cents, I think 97 cents back then. They haven't too much changed, maybe 115 or something now. So I got a composition book and I literally I took the information off of the billing summary. So I wrote down the name of the credit card, what my total credit line was, the total amount that was due, then what my minimum payment was, the date that the minimum payment was due, which was very important, and then I wrote down contact information. How do I contact them? The mailing address and the phone number, and if they had a web address, I wrote that down in my composition book. Now, why did I do that? That actually like released any anxiety or stress for me, as far as dealing with the bills. That was like my way of taking charge. So as future bills came, guess what? I didn't even look at them. I just put them in the shredder because I had all of the information already in my composition book. So I didn't have to
Hmm.
think about, oh, these things are continuing to come. Now, my trial and error, I would do things like, say, for instance, when I really added it up, I took like the minimum amounts that were due for all of the cars. So say I had 10 cars, the minimum payment due, I added those up. And Audrey, when I added those up, I more than had enough money to pay those, right? So the first thing though that I did was I'm making all this money. Guess what? I owe $25 to this one. I'm gonna pay 75. I owe $50 to this one. I'm gonna pay
Mhm.
$100, right? And I said, oh, they're gonna think that, oh, she is just doing so well. She's so great. Oh, we can quit calling her and stuff. Wrong.
Right. Right.
Wrong. Because guess what? The next month, when I would take a bill and do that, maybe I would pay twice as much. Whatever the minimum payment due was, I would pay twice as much sometimes. But when I would get the bill, guess what? I would feel so defeated because I would owe more than what
Right.
I previously owed, the month before. So then I had to read the bill and try to figure out why. And the reason why was because I wasn't paying it on time.
Mm.
So not only were they putting on whatever the fee, the monthly fee was, they were also adding a late fee. So
Mhm.
that was killing me. And so I learned, okay, you have to pay them on time. So just through the trial and error, then I created this system, which I call it the domino. I mean, and baby, if you do the domino, by the end, I've never played dominoes, but have you ever been around people who play dominoes? And the men, when they really get into it, they bam,
Yeah. Yeah.
they slam the
Right.
dominoes onto the table. I got like that as I was paying the bills and paying them off. I mean, I'm slapping these bills, just because I got that. But just making that one simple change of just paying the minimum amount due. So I stopped like paying extra, right? I
Mhm.
stopped that. What I did was I focused on paying the minimum amount that was due, paying it on time. And then I took one bill and said, okay, after I added this all up, what I knew I had to pay every month. So now really I'm creating a budget, right? And to me, a budget was a dirty word. I'm gonna tell
Mhm.
you right now, if my husband mentioned budget, he knew that he was in for a fight. Because you know what a budget meant to me at that time? A budget meant that I couldn't have something.
You
So
know what? And I also feel like a budget also means that for some people, because you said it was a dirty word to you, like it was a fight. But sometimes people just are afraid to see exactly how much money they waste, right? Because you start to write that stuff down, especially when it comes to couples. And I want you to talk about that for a second because you said my husband and I made this plan, especially when it comes to couples, because a lot of times couples, if one person is a good person managing money and the other person is a bad person managing money, the minute you start talking about doing a budget and going through what you spend, the person that know they mess up a lot of money, they get highly upset about that. They don't want to see a budget because it's not that. It's like, okay, if I put this on paper, I have to admit that I'm making a mess. And I want to say something else, y'all, but this is a family show and this on Sunday. I'm making a mess of my money situation, right? So talk about
mm,
that for a second because you said your husband would mention the budget. You was like, that's a dirty word to me. But you also said previously that we sat down together and said, this is what we're going to do. Talk about that part because that dynamic right there, we know that most relationships crumble because couples cannot
oh
talk,
yes.
not even, they can't even talk about money. Like money is
Mhm.
like a taboo right along with intimacy. Like those are the two things that destroy so many relationships: money and intimacy. And so, and I could say, I honestly believe when you have a money issue, there's no intimacy. And if it is, it's a struggle. So
Mhm.
talk about how you guys were able to come together on that part and say, look, this is where we are, this is what we need to do, because that's a big one. And I feel like you gotta do a workshop on that anyway. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, look, you said a whole lot in that. So first, the budget. So my husband would talk about budgeting for things, and soon as the word came out of his mouth, I would just go off. I mean, I would just it would we would definitely end up in an argument. But somehow when we got married, we did agree when we bought our home that as things were coming in, that we would only have things coming in that were paid for. So I mean everything. So but now my husband and I had been together some time before we were together in college before we got married. So there were some things like, say for instance, my dining room table. My dining room set is actually antique. It's like 125 years old now. Can you
Wow.
believe that? And I literally put it on layaway when I was in college. So, and we did not get married. My husband didn't want to get married until we graduated from college. So we didn't actually, it wasn't final until after we got married, got a house, and it came in. But we did that with everything, the couch, whatever it was. When it came in, it had to be actually paid for. So if we would go and we're looking at a washer and dryer or whatever it was, when we saw what the price was, then we started putting our money aside to actually purchase those things. But to me, up until that point, a budget meant that I couldn't have something. And I felt like I had struggled through school. I worked. I wasn't one of those kids who went to college and didn't have to work. I had a job. It wasn't the easiest job. It wasn't the hardest, but I worked at McDonald's. I had to work. I went to work at 5 in the morning. I worked 5 to 1. I mean, so it wasn't the easiest thing. So I'm ready to enjoy and spend my money. So I felt like a budget meant that I couldn't have something, which really now on the other side of it, what a budget means is just that I have more control over when I can get something, right? So
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
I have more control over it. Then what was the second part of that? You were saying, um, how did we sit down
Yeah, how did you guys?
and
Because you said we determined. You said we made a choice that we were gonna clear this debt up. And when I think about that, I just think about a lot of people who struggle with that. Like they
right?
like you said, right? So you got this person who say, you know what, I go to work every day, I work hard every day. I should be able to do what I want with my money. Here's the thing though, public service, cell phone bills, internet bills, a
Right.
mortgage payment if you got those things don't go away. So yes,
And they
I
don't
get
care
that
how hard you working
they don't care
or
how hard you work.
anything. You got this product or this service from them, and the expectation was that you were going to pay for it.
Yep.
So that's just how it is. But what I will say to this, see, this is going to shock you. So when I made the decision that, hey, look, uh-uh, I got to get this debt out of here, my husband was not on the same page.
Oh.
So he was not, he was agreeable to paying, but he was not on the page of actually clearing the debt. I wanted
Mm.
to see zero, right?
Mhm.
So when I came up with this plan, what I say to couples, and I get asked this often when I'm talking from the stage, that's couple question, and I tell couples, look, what you do is whoever it is, whether it's the wife, the husband, or however it's going, you take charge of what you can take charge of, right?
Mhm.
So all of the bills that I could handle, that I, independent of him, with this plan, then that's how I put the plan together. And
Mhm.
then as I started to clear them out, and then there was room for some of this other stuff that he wasn't really ready to start clearing out, then I could kind of dump like my extra onto that.
So
Does
okay,
that
so
make
let me
sense?
back you up there because that sound listen to this, okay? Because I'm listening to what you're saying, and I know somebody right now saying, okay, all right. So if there's a couple, and let's say for instance that couple can that let's say it's the man, right? He can pay he can pay the things that he has control over, which most of the time that they're his bills or her bills,
Mm-hmm.
right? I can take control of my bills. I'm gonna pay off all my stuff because you don't want to pay off your stuff, and so but that still becomes a problem because you can you because I feel like it could become a problem because if I have sat down and said okay, I'm gonna come up with this plan to pay off all my bills, and I talk to my significant other about let's get together and let's do this together, but they constantly push it away like it's nothing. And then you're over there saying, well, I know what I want to do. I want to pay off this, I want to pay off that, I want to pay off that. And then you pay all of that stuff off. And then they're still over there in the same situation. part of me is thinking, well, when you figure it out, let me know. How did you
No.
manage that? Okay.
Well, so I was over here just happy. I wasn't saying a word. I was working and I put my plan in place. So, say for instance, so in the domino, basically, just to make the domino sound simple, but if you, when you purchase the book, then there's a graph, there's examples, everything in the book for you so that you can actually be very effective in applying this to your life. I mean, I'm telling you, no matter how much money it is that you are making, you can pay off all of your debt. I guarantee it. All of your debt, including your mortgage, in 10 years if you will follow the plan. So basically, what it is that you pay every bill that you have, the minimum payment, you pay that and you pay it on time. But then once you are able to see like how much is this really, right? Then what I saw was that I had like a little extra. It was easy for me to take an extra $100 or say $200 was my extra amount that I could pay. Well, then I would take, well, no, let's say something small because I don't want people to think, oh my gosh, like this, you got to come up with, because how am I going to have an extra $200? I'm just going paycheck to paycheck. But when you actually write it down, you really, really do see how much money it is that you have. But say it's an extra $50. So I'm that $50 is going to the bill that is the least amount. So say like we often get those little store cards like Dillard's or Macy's or whatever, and maybe there's $500 on there. So what I would do with that card is I would pay the minimum balance plus $50. That is so powerful because you can even look at that and see how long it's going to take you to pay that bill off. Say that $500, 50 times 10 is what? That's $500, but you're probably paying $25 already. So you're paying $75 a month to dealers, and you can pretty much put on your calendar, dealers will be paid off this month. Then what you do though is you're already comfortable. So you want to make it an amount that's comfortable. You're comfortable paying this $75, right? Now that this bill is paid off, you're going to take that $75 that you were paying to say dealers, and now you're going to add it to the next bill that where you owe the least amount. Say you owed $750 to another bill. Well, now you're going to pay the minimum amount that you owed plus the $75. And
Mm-hmm.
so and if you think about it, by the time you wipe out these credit cards, say you have a car note that's $500. By the time you get to that $500 car note, girl, listen, I was bam, bam,
Right.
and I
Right.
paid my car off. I paid my student loans off. As a matter of fact, I paid that $70,000 off in 2 years. And
Wow.
not only did I pay that off, I was actually slapping my mortgage because basically once I paid my car off, I didn't have anything left because
Right.
you're paying all the credit cards off first. And then here we are with my car. Once my car was paid off. So now you think I have $500 plus, say I had $500 that I was paying to the credit cards. I have $1,000 now that I was already paying to stuff.
But Teresa,
I don't,
some people look at that, Teresa, like I got this extra I got this extra $1,000. I'm about to go blow it. You know what I mean? They still have bills because I've seen it happen. Extra money come in, you are in debt, but you want to take the extra money and blow it. And I'm thinking that's not extra money if you still owe stuff. In my mind, it's not
right.
extra money when you still owe things. Especially
Hmm.
if you're delinquent, there is no extra money. There is no extra money
Right.
as long as you owe stuff. And that's how I think about it. And it's so crazy because I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about numbers in my head, which I do this all day long pretty much. I'm thinking about numbers in my head, right? You and I've talked about this. We got these numbers. We got to hit these numbers by this time next year. We got these numbers because we talk like that, y'all. We
Right.
got our little girl thing going on. We talk about these numbers and these goals, and these are big numbers and no little numbers. But in order for us to hit these numbers, we have to have a certain mindset. So
Absolutely.
the mindset piece of that, I think, is what set people back, because their mind is telling them, I work hard. Like you said, I'm depriving myself. I work hard for this. I should be able to do what I want to do because I work hard for this. I go to work. And so that mindset, it's like a mindset. I don't even know what you call that mindset, because I work hard too. Like, you don't think I want to be like chilling on Sunday right now, doing nothing? Like, go and get me some crabs and
Absolutely.
doing absolutely nothing. But in
At
my
the nail
mind,
shop, at the spa,
right. Right.
all,
But
all
in my
those
mind, I'm
things.
thinking, well, you know what? I know I'm launching something new, so I can't really, not today. That's how my mind is going. And so for the people that are listening, it sounds simple what you did, because it is simple. But if they have not made up their mind about, you know what, I'm gonna take that extra $50 and I'm gonna tack it to the next bill. And for me, I found that when I paid off my debt, what I did was I paid off one bill at a time, and
Hmm.
it was so gratifying, y'all. It just felt like, oh my God, to get that bill paid off is like paid. Like, I would pay the minimum and I would pay one off. Then I'll go and do just what you said, pay another. It felt amazing. And when I got to zero and I was walking around with zero, and like, yeah, and the credit card people like, hey, we're gonna give you an increase. We're gonna give it, and they always
Oh
give it
yeah. Oh,
right
oh,
around
or
Christmas
when they
time.
call, and sorry to interrupt, because I was getting 1-800-1866-1877 and unknown.
Yeah,
And people always stare at me. I said, aren't those the numbers your bill collectors use? Those are
right,
the same numbers, right?
right,
Now we
right,
have spam,
right.
potential
And
spam.
I'll tell you right now, if anybody call my number and I don't know the number, I'm not answering. And my office line rings more than anything. I'm like, I was telling my husband, I'm thinking, who are these people calling the office line and they never leave a question, they never leave a message. I'm like, I don't know who you are. I know I owe nothing over there because I have no debt in my
Right.
business. Like, I have none. And that's the crazy
Hmm.
part. My personal life, I had debt. In my business, I have no debt. It's the weirdest
Right.
thing. I just have like the my expenses for the bill, but there is no debt on my business. And I
Hmm.
had personal debt. But when I tell you, I'm at a point where I think I got three credit cards left to pay off. And I'm like, those be paid off by the end of this year. And I know that because it's not a lot. It's just me
Hmm.
saying, do I need to take that money and put it on the business because I'm trying to launch something new? I'm trying to, this that thing for me. It's not me saying, hey, I'm about to go out and go shopping and I'm about to go drop, a grand on some shoes. Not me. That's not me. Now, have you
Right.
met me at 24, 22, 22? You met me at 22? Yeah, your girl was a shopaholic. My brother told my mother, she said, you need to get Audrey some help. She got a problem. Because I used to love the shop, girl. I used to have so many clothes. My closet had clothes with tags on them that I had never worn. I love the shop. And when I became an
Hmm.
entrepreneur, all that ceased. And when I became a mother, everything stopped. Like, my whole life just hit pause. And I remember though, I remember when I realized that I wanted a certain type of life when I was in college. And I met this before I went to college, I worked the summer program at a halfway house. And my boss, her name was Vicky. I'm never gonna forget her. And this is way back, this is way, way back, y'all. I was 17 years old. My boss name was Vicky, and she lived in Montclair. And she had this beautiful Victorian house. And I used to babysit for her when I was in college to make some extra money. And I remember saying, I want to live in Montclair. I want a house like this, right? I remember saying that. And that's when I realized I like that lifestyle. And then my I got a better version of what that looked like when I started dating my daughter's dad, because his father was uber wealthy, right? To the point where we were like, the cars was flying, like he would send a car to pick us up from the airport, and the car would pick us up and drive us to the house up in the mountains. And then he flew us to Jamaica for 8 days. And I was like, oh my God, people, black folk live like this. I didn't have a clue. And I was like, I want that type of lifestyle. And from that day forward, that's the kind of lifestyle I wanted. But here's the thing. I didn't have that kind of mindset. So mindset is, I knew what I wanted, but I didn't have the mindset to do the things that these people had done to accomplish those things. Talk about mindset, because I know you're big on mindset. Talk about that.
Yes, mindset is really, really huge. How you view it is all about perception. I say all the time that your words create your reality. So, how you think, that is going to determine your actions, which is then going to determine your your actual reality. So if you think, if you walk around with the mindset that, you know what, I work hard, I should be able to get everything that I want, and so I'm just going to spend all this money, then I mean, you're setting yourself up to deal with anxiety and depression, because it does cause a lot of anxiety when your phone is ringing, even if you don't even know who it is, if it's just the spam people, or if it's during like the voting time, your phone is constantly ringing. That phone constantly ringing, it causes anxiety and stress in your home. And then if you're thinking that you just don't have enough money, to deal with it, or you answer the phone and you have this person on the other end who is challenging you, even sometimes saying that they're going to turn this over to their attorney and that type of thing. I teach, people how to actually handle that, and how to actually talk with the creditors. But when you're new to trying to deal with it, it can even cause fear, in you. So your mindset is like super, super important. And you have to make some decisions. I call it the 4 Ds to success. So I'll share that. So the 4 Ds to success for me is one, your desire. What is it that you want? Sometimes, we're just going along through life and we're just doing what we think that we're supposed to do. And sometimes we're not even in connection with our own selves. Like I remember speaking with a friend one time, and that has stuck with me. She was approaching divorce, and she was saying she didn't even know. She knew like his favorite color, his favorite food, his favorite everything, but she didn't even know what her favorite color was or what she really liked. And I thought, wow, so sometimes we can be disconnected from ourselves because we're such givers, especially women, because we just give, 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 and then we pause for a second, and then we just pour, 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 but we're not actually recouping and restoring and pouring and making sure that we get replenished. So, your mindset about these things, are thinking, that you're under this pressure to like do the same things that everyone else is doing. I mean, you have to really just take a moment and identify with yourself. So, first, desire. What is it that you want? One question that my husband and I did start circulating around our house was, what do we want our everyday life to look like?
Mm-hmm.
And when we started to produce the answers to that, then the next step was, well, how do we get that? And obviously, that meant that we were going to have to make some type of changes in our financial lives, although we felt like we were living well, but there were other things that we wanted to do. And so, paying all that extra interest and stuff like that, having now bouncing a check, girl, listen, that to me is giving somebody money. So that is just not a part of my thing. I gave that up. I don't know,
Yeah, I
way
don't even. Do
way
people
back
still use checks anymore? Like
college time.
I don't know when the last time I wrote a check for anything. I think the only time I wrote a check is when I did pay off all my bills, and I wrote the check because I really wanted to make sure when they cashed the check, I had a paper trail that I paid the bills off. But
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes. Yeah, so mindset is really important. I wanted to go back though, you to the couple question, because I don't think I really answered that, and that's really important. So what you do, so I had bills that where I was the primary card holder. So it's in my name, but perhaps I had gotten him a card. I had some that I didn't. He didn't have a card, but there were others that were, and then there were cards where he was the primary card holder. So he had, more control over those, and he was focused, on paying those. I wasn't contributing to that. So basically, what I did was everything that I could actually control, that I knew that I could control, then I put that into the plan. Now, the interesting thing about that was that my focus was on paying off. His focus was on, maintaining them in good standing and that type of thing. So one day he says to me, he wanted to have a financial meeting. I'm already laughing because you already know what happened, right? Because he wanted to have a financial meeting. I said, okay. He said, so can we meet on Sunday? I said, sure. And I don't know what prompted him to even want to do this meeting. And he said, okay, so you need to bring all your bills that you owe and like what the total amount that you owe on each. And I said, okay. He said, you're going to be ready? I said, yeah. So we get So we get to this meeting, and I remember going to our home office, and we were sitting in there. And so he said, "Okay, well, you want to go first?" I said, "Okay." And I said, "Oh, what do you think?" And he's like, "What?" And I said,
Like I've been
I
paying them
don't,
off.
I had paid my student loan off. Y'all, that's a major accomplishment. I had paid my student loan off. I had paid my car off. And I was paying extra. So now what I did, I didn't go over there and bother the bills that he was paying now. But I did not take the money and say, "Oh, I can splurge and go on a vacation or go on a big shopping trip or anything like that." What I did was I started dumping that money towards the interest on our mortgage. So much so that when we sold our first house, that we walked away from the table with somewhere between 75 and 80% of the value of our home,
Wow.
which was crazy. And the
Wow.
people had already sent it to our bank account before we even left the building.
Wow.
That was major.
Wow.
So and so he still had, his things. And so then he was a little bit more interested in finding out, okay, wait a minute, what have you been doing? But to avoid that button heads, just take, because it all benefits you as a couple. So, and in my mind, that's just the way that I looked at it. I didn't look at him like, oh, you're not doing the right thing. He's the man, he's doing his thing. And so, okay. but but for me and for my peace of mind, I needed to get away from those bills coming all the time, the phone ringing and all that. And so, and that went away. And then along the way, I was so empowered because I became so in charge that I would pick up the phone and call the creditor. I mean, there were things that I was doing, like, say for instance, something was like really big, and I was like, you know what, I don't want to keep paying on this. I have this much money. I'm going to call them and ask them, would they take this as a settlement? You can do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked up the phone and I called them and said, "Hey, I have $2,500. You know, will you accept this and close this account out?" And some, I'll put it like this, because I don't want to make this too long. You have to get the book. But they all agreed. In the
Yeah.
end, they all agreed, and I was able to. So there were things that I did to, but if my phone rang, I'm answering the phone like, yes. And I'm
Right.
not answering it all hesitant and, and scared. Now, one thing that you said though, like, once you pay something off, it's not extra money. So it's not extra money. But this is what I would say, is that when you are developing your plan, then you can take a break sometimes, and say, "Hey, look, when I get these five paid off or these three, then that money, that $100, 200, 250, whatever it is, that next month I'm going to take that and I'm going to do something special for myself, but I'm going right back to it." So you write your plan out and you stick to it. So that's where the 4Ds come in. The first is your desire. That's what you want to do. I can't help you with that because, I say that even Christ left us with free will. That's your free will. That is what you want to do. I can tell you all day long, like I said with my husband, that you need to pay these bills off. But if that is not your desire, I can't do anything about that. But if that's your desire, I can tell you, I can work with you through the domino and you will be successful. So then the second one is your decision. That's what are we going to do about it? So this is what I want to do. What are we going to do about it? How are we going to do it, right? So you establish your plan, and then your dedication is how you actually work your plan. And then the last one is discipline, how
Mm-hmm.
you stick to the plan.
Right.
So those things right there, that will help you to be successful.
Woo! Listen, we could listen. I listen, y'all. We could talk about this all day long, but you got to get the book. And I know it's a conference coming. It's something you got to go. Listen, get the book. It's a really good story, y'all. It's a good read. She writes really well, by the way. And I probably said that too many times, but she really does. Like I like to read stuff that draws me in. So you would think that it's like a whole. It's a story first, and I love the
And
story,
when
and I
I
love.
tell you that, sorry to interrupt, but when I tell you that I really tried to be as transparent as possible. When I tell you this is not a look, I woke up like and I was just like this already. I am telling you about the tears, the worry, the stress, the all of that. Sometimes now, like I'm sitting here and it's hard to even imagine that I was really in that place. But getting out of debt is and sometimes another thing is because I'm a nurse and I say some just like with different disease processes like high blood pressure and blood sugar, high blood sugar, and being overweight, people think that that's just common, that that's just normal. No, it's not. It's what we see a lot, but it's not normal, and it does not have to be. And so a lot of times, even with my girlfriends, I can remember when I was trying to establish my plan, I would call my other nurse friends and say to them, "What are you doing about me today?" They like, "Child,"
Right.
no one had any kind of plan on
Right.
getting out of debt. Everybody had plenty of it, but guess what? All of my nurse friends said, I don't care. I said, your credit score is going to be low. They were like, I don't care. I have money because
Mm.
we can make money.
Mm-hmm.
We can make money, and there's some unique opportunities for nurses. I mean, really, as a nurse, I could go to work. I could have gone to work this morning, and when I got off work, literally went to the place and they gave me money for the day, not have to even wait 2 weeks or a week or anything like
Wow.
that. So, I mean, those types of things are actually available for us. So sometimes, you're just not good with it because it's just coming, it's just
Yeah.
flowing. So you think, okay, and if you're pressed by a bill, good, I'll just go and work a shift, you know,
Right.
go
Right.
tonight and work in the morning, go and get the money and just pay it. But that's just not always, the way to be.
I think for me, when I think about that, I'm always thinking about building wealth. And for me, that's not a wealth mindset. Like if I realize I'm just gonna go do some overtime, I'm just gonna go there and make this money today just so I can have some money in my pocket. That's not a wealth mindset to me. So that's never what I'm thinking about when I think about this. I'm always thinking about the long term. Like what do I want? What would I like for my daughter and granddaughter to be able to do after I'm gone? So I'm in a wealth mindset all the time, building a legacy and leaving something behind, to say, listen, this is what I created. And it's not me being vain, it's just me looking at the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts and the Morgan Chases and all these people. Those were people. Hines, these were people, people. Like, and I don't think the brands are just there. People them forward. They were people. Chrysler was a these were people that we still know today because they left legacies in generational wealth. And for me, if you cannot build generational wealth, if your whole mindset is, I don't care, I'm just gonna go do some overtime and get the money and put it in my pocket and spend it up and go back and do that again. That's a crazy cycle in my mind. So
It
I
is a crazy cycle,
yeah,
but if it's all that you know, and I think that that's the thing, and I think that that really helps me. I don't really say that I'm a coach, but I guess you could put that word on it. But that really helps me to help anyone who wants to try it or work with me to be successful, because I can understand like where you're coming from. It may
hmm,
not have been my particular circumstance or the way that I was raised or what I have experienced, but I can just understand. But we have to change that. And more of us have to come to understand money and how money works. So if we do want to leave money behind, or even if just wanting the freedom to be able to go to on a vacation, even just once a year, let alone being able to take multiple vacations, or having the freedom to, guess what, as we are getting older, we have parents who are aging and who may need us, and we need to take time off to put yourself into a position to where you don't have to be worried about taking that day off. Or you have a parent who passes away or a loved one who passes away. It is major to me to be in a position to where I don't have to worry about that 3 days, because I might
yeah,
not be ready to come back in 3 days. I might not be mentally, emotionally, or whatever it is ready to come back. in 3 days. So when
Yeah.
you have like your money positioned correctly, then you know what, I can take that extra 1 or 2 weeks or a month, or heck, you know what, I'm not coming back.
Right.
I'm gonna reposition myself and find something else, but I have something to hold me until I do find that something else. So it's just like I said, it's a change in perspective, and like you said, a change in your mindset.
All right, ma'am. Listen, we could go on and on, but we won't. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listen. It's in the shopping cart. It's in the carousel. The book is there. Get the book. Y'all heard what she said. She said a lot. She said a lot. Get the book. It's in the shopping cart. And for those who are watching on LinkedIn or YouTube or Twitter, how can they reach out to you, Teresa? The book is on Amazon, y'all, so you can get the book on Amazon. But how can they
Yeah,
reach
so
out to you?
my website is IamTeresaC.com. There's no H in Teresa, so Teresa. So IamTeresaC.com. You can go there and you can subscribe, send me a message, and I'll definitely get in touch with you. Love to talk to you. My Instagram is at IamTeresa_C. And then on Facebook at IamTeresaC.
All right. Listen, thank you all for listening. I will be back again with another great guest on Behind the Book. Listen, these people have taken the time to write these books that's going to help you do the things that you want to do in life. Listen, you want to get financially fit, get the book. Get the book. 2023 is quickly approaching. We stop playing.
Yes.
It's no time to play. Teresa and I talk on a daily basis. We got major goals, and hers is very specific. She made me get very specific. Like my goal is May 15th at May 16th at 5:01 p.m.
5:01 p.m.
And I was like, holy crap. So I had to go back and readjust mine. I was like, okay, I got like three. So y'all can't see the board, but I got one that's set for October the 1st. Then I got one that's set for December the 31st. Then I got one that's set for August the 22nd. It's all on this. You can't see it's right there. But she made me lock it down like that. She's no joke, y'all. So get the book. Go reach out to her. That's her website. I am Teresa. See, Teresa, thank you so much. You could have been anywhere, but thank you for coming on here and sharing with us how to get out of debt, because I feel like there are a lot of people right now who are still struggling, and there's a lot of money floating around for real. But because it's floating around doesn't necessarily mean we're doing the right things with it as comes into our hands. We had a lot of PPP money floating around. People thought they had hit the lottery in the pandemic. Now they're right back where they started. Everything's extremely high and expensive right now. So there are a lot of people still struggling. So thank you for sharing your
Yes.
wisdom. Thank you for sharing your story. Get the book, y'all. I mean, it's going to help you change your life. It helped her change hers. We talk a lot, so she's always helping me do some great things in mine. I'm appreciative, like for real. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, girl. I will talk to you again.
All
Listen,
right. Thank you so much for having me.
you're very welcome. I'll be back again another Sunday. I don't know it's Sunday yet, but I'll be back again with another book behind the book author talking about their story and how they got to where they are and wrote the book about it. Yes, they wrote a book, baby. Thank you all. Thank you all. Have a wonderful summer. Until next time, make it a great day. Bye, everybody.